Hey guys, welcome back to Creating Careers Podcast. On today's episode, I had a chance to sit down and talk with Kurt Jenkins. If you haven't had a chance already to get to know who Kurt is, I really encourage you to check out his Instagram, follow along on his journey. Kurt is what I would describe as one of the most unique backgrounds of the individuals that I've had on this podcast so far. Kurt comes from an entertainment and music background, specifically as an entertainer on cruise lines. And that opportunity and work actually led to one of his most creative and probably audacious endeavors in filmmaking that I've ever seen. I was really excited to just get to know Kurt. I had seen his work and sort of follow along on his journey on social media for a while now. And I was really excited to sort of find out, where did this guy come from? What's his background? What sort of started him down the road of being a filmmaker. And it was really neat to just hear his story, and I'm excited to share it with you today. Check it out. Kurt Jenkins, thank you so much for joining me today on the Creating Creators podcast. I've been following your stuff for a while. I think you came to the last meetup, and I got to meet you there. And I think your background, at least, is probably one of the more interesting backgrounds of the people that I've had on the podcast. So I do want to get into some of that, but I also want to keep myself a little bit on track. But first of all, just thank you for joining me today.
Well, thank you for having me. It's always nice to talk to someone who is like-minded and in a shared industry.
Well, one thing that I have always said about myself, you even mentioned off the podcast that you feel like you're not necessarily, I guess, compared to the other people that you have seen me interview, you're like, I don't know if I should even be on this podcast, something like that. I'm telling you, from my perspective, I shouldn't be on this podcast.
Hey, fair enough.
Out of everyone that I interview, I am by far the least qualified to be on here.
But you're providing an essential service in the sense that you're acting as a connector and sort of a central node to people in a region, and you got your own thing going. You may
Yeah.
feel underqualified, which I guarantee you're not, but you're becoming the face of. You're like the Joe Rogan of Southeastern creative podcasting.
Well,
You
I
know?
appreciate that. I appreciate that.
Yeah.
And what's easy for me, and probably a lot of people that like to host these kind of I guess, tools or platforms, I'm a genuine fan. I mean, that's always been the neat part for me is, and I do want to get into your work, because the more I've seen of you on Instagram, the more I've seen of your YouTube channel, the more I'm like, this guy's like, he's interesting. You're definitely, like, I would say you and I, you probably would have performed a lot better in school than I ever did. You seem a lot more reflective than I. Well, you
I didn't
seem a
learn.
lot more. Go ahead.
No, there's a lot that I didn't learn until I left school.
I get that. I
I
get
was
that.
a, I
But
was a terrible student because the stuff that they were teaching me, I was like, I don't care to learn this. Like
yeah.
I'm just learning to play guitar at 15 years old. Like, why do I want to learn algebra?
Well,
But I
and
guarantee now, if I wanted to learn algebra, I could probably crush it. But
right.
I still don't want to learn algebra. But
Well,
but it's amazing what you can learn when you're not a student.
yeah. Even the stuff, like, I'm seeing the sticky notes behind you. Like,
Hmm.
that's your process, the way that you organize things, the way you lay things out and structure them before you even get into it. I
Hmm.
find really interesting. And sort of what I was alluding to earlier is, I feel like you do things in a way that I never would have thought to do it. That's not the way that my mind really works. And that I value, that I appreciate, and that I'm like, I want to know more about that. So,
Hmm.
I appreciate what you're doing. But let's go ahead and get into a little bit of your story. So, first of all, tell me, who is Kurt Jenkins? Tell me your origin story. Where'd you grow up? Where'd you come from?
Well, Kurt Jenkins is not worthy of anything. But in terms of like where I grew up in Birmingham. I went to Hoover High School.
Yeah.
I was born on June 18th, 1984. You don't want to go that far back. No, but in terms of like who I am and the selective experiences that define sort of what I'm doing professionally. Um, my life has always been a sort of a, a balance and a struggle and a fight with multiple interests. I sort of discovered filmmaking and guitar at like the same time. So there's always been this competing, like a competition for my focus. Um, and so for I would to make music videos with my friends. Like when Weird Al was coming up in like 1994, me and my buddies would make like parody of Weird Al videos. And then I was also learning to play guitar at school and like discovering Jimi Hendrix and learning piano and then watching films. And so it was always this sort of like stacking. And then when I got into like high school, I started to get into musical theater because I was good at that as well. And I was in a performing group. I was in a performing group that toured Alabama, and so there was always this combination of things that I didn't know how to rectify, and so I always felt like I wasn't really good at any of them because I was never giving any of them my full focus. And so, there's a lot of stories about me in college. I'm skipping film school classes to go play guitar, not playing guitar for 3 months so I could make a feature film. It was like all these things that there's always been this sort of balance because you can't do everything 100% at the same time. So the biggest thing in terms of like where my story is now relative to my origin story, it's been finding ways to combine the things, sort of like the synesthesia of art. Like, where does filmmaking and guitar playing meet? Where does
Yeah.
musical theater and filmmaking meet? Or where does content creation and filmmaking or, logistics meet? Um, that's kind of that's kind of where I am right now. It's like, how do I combine things in a new way? I'm more of a generalist than a like a doctorate. Like a doctorate, you know everything about one little thing, and I know enough about everything to be able to combine them in ways that hopefully are fresh. That's
Do you
that's the path that I've taken.
do you find that, like, looking back now, that it benefited you in that sort of back and forth?
Absolutely. I
I
wouldn't
mean, it
have had it any
seems
other way.
Yeah, it seems like you. I mean, you're saying you're a generalist, but you seem to be really good, definitely in musical and performance. Like you've, I haven't gotten into your career yet, but obviously, just based on your content, you performed on cruise line, at least
Hmm.
most recently. I think
Yeah.
I've seen like up to like 9 years ago. Was that your first trip?
Yeah, about 10 years ago. Yeah, nine. Yeah, that's accurate. I say 10 because it's sexier to say like I did it for 10 years. But like, yeah, I've been 2012 was when it got like serious. There's a niche of theater called like at the time they were calling it guitar theater, which like the actors are the musicians and the stories are kind of stories of famous musicians. Like there's Buddy Holly, Johnny Cash, Million Dollar Quartet, which is like all the old Sun Records guys, like the early rock and roll, Elvis Presley, Jerry Lewis, Carl Perkins. And I got into that because again, I had had enough experience in acting and enough experience in guitar to be able to do that job well enough to be hired. And then when I got hired, I was able to get better at doing that job, which allowed me to get hired more and more again. And so I was able to sort of climb the hierarchy in a very narrow way. My own version of a PhD is like playing Carl Perkins and Million Dollar Quartet for 10 years. I've got a
Yeah.
PhD in Carl Perkins within Million Dollar Quartet, which is for those that don't know, it's a Broadway musical about the sort of the founding fathers of American rock and roll in the South in the 1950s. And I think I lost track of your question.
Well, let me ask you this: how because to me, it's the idea of playing an instrument first and foremost takes so much attention. The
Hmm.
little bit of attempts that I've made at playing guitar or playing drums, like I can't pay attention to anything else. And here you are performing musically while at the same time acting. Like
Hmm.
for that to be able to happen, you've got to be able to be so ingrained musically in what you're doing to where it happens without thinking. One of those I feel
Yeah.
like has to happen without thinking. How
Yeah.
did you get to that point?
Doing it a lot, like reps, just reps on reps. Um, because it kind of comes in layers. Because when you're, because even in this show, in the show that I did, and still am doing in some way, it's not like a rock concert where the musicians are just playing to the audience and they're just in the moment with the audience. Each song in the show is a piece of the story. And so you have to be able to like separate the elements uh, and then put them back together. So like if I'm playing a song, but I just got finished having an argument, then the way that I play the song and like how I act in the song is informed by the moment that just happened. And so you have to understand, and this really just comes with time. It really just comes with doing it over and over and over again. Is understanding like, okay, well, how do you play the instrument to fit the mood? What are the acting choices? And so you work on these separately, and then you slowly start to integrate them over time. And then on top of that, you slowly start to not have to think about it so much, to where by the time you've done it a couple hundred times, it just becomes a part of you.
Yeah.
That's the simplest way I can describe it.
Well, it sounds like to me I'm hearing you say that the musical is part of the acting performance as well. Like the musically, you were still acting and performing
Yes.
in playing and
Yes.
singing.
Yes.
Okay. All
Yeah.
right.
Yeah.
Tell me
Because like,
this.
yeah, yeah, you could go for it. I could talk
Well,
about that forever,
well,
but
this
I don't
this
want.
is this is a little bit of a jump to a different subject, but
Okay.
is there a moment in your childhood that you really think shaped you creatively? Is there a moment in your youth that really like you look back on and you think maybe that was a pivotal moment for you?
Yeah, there's two things. There's one, the first one was hearing Jimi Hendrix for the first time. Because I've been playing piano for a couple years, and like I liked it okay. It was fine. It was like music theory. My guitar or my piano teacher, are you familiar with the Mr. Mackey character on South Park? Like the okay, like
Yeah,
that guy?
yeah, yeah,
This
yeah.
piano teacher, um, he was he like when I say he was Mr. Mackey, he was Mr. Mackey. So imagine Mr. Mackey teaching you the piano. He was a good teacher, but like
Right.
for
Yeah.
13-year-old
Not a
me,
real
it wasn't the most exciting thing
right.
in the world,
No
even though he
no
was a very
cool
good teacher.
factor.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah, but he was a very good teacher. And then I heard Jimi Hendrix for the first time. I heard the song Red House, and I was like, oh my gosh, I didn't know you could do that. And I showed my dad, and my dad said something to the effect of, he was like, that's the sound of someone saying, here I am. And I was like,
Hmm.
whoa, that's cool. So that was the thing that affected me musically, that showed me that like I had a real interest in music. And what the pivotal moment in film that showed me like, oh, you might understand this, is when I think it was 10 years old. I went to see Jurassic Park with my grandfather, and later that day we were at Toys R Us, like because I used to just walk around. I just wanted to go walk around Toys R Us because I loved it, and I was so excited about the movie. And I was talking to this dude in the line, and I was like, and there's the scene where the Jeep is the T-Rex is chasing the Jeep, and there's the rearview mirror, and it says objects in the mirror closer than they appear, and the T-Rex like goes that the mouth goes into the mirror, and it shows that it's like his head's way bigger and he's way closer than they think. And the guy was like, I didn't notice that. And I was like, oh, I noticed that, and I'm 10. So like I understood the language of cinema, and I was like, oh, okay, that shows me that I at least understand what he's trying to do. So those two moments were like, oh, you have an aptitude for music and film. And I didn't think about that intellectually, but looking back on it, that was kind of a signal.
Yeah. Tell me this. I want to know about your journey as a creative. Like,
Okay.
tell me what, like, where did you learn your skills? Where, especially getting into more of like filmmaking, because we haven't talked about your work yet, but I know
Yep.
you've done some film. I understand you did film school. Talk a
Yeah.
little bit of like what that journey has been from like getting started interested at 10, you know, to doing this, to then finally actually beginning to develop those skills and learn even the technical hardware of it.
Yeah. It's really kind of just been, I've kind of followed the path of least resistance. And that doesn't hasn't always served me well, because there are times when the path of least resistance isn't the path that teaches you the most. It's the path that is the easiest, which
Right.
sometimes, if you're working within something that you're naturally good at and you follow the path of least resistance, you're probably not going to learn as, I don't know. It's hard to really quantify. There's sometimes when I think that like I've skated by on natural talent too much, and if things were a little harder for me, I probably would be better at my craft,
Yeah.
because I would have had to be forced to learn it. Like content creation for me is hard. Like when I look at some of my YouTube videos that I think are cool, and then I look at the analytics and I'm like, damn, no one liked that. No one
Yeah.
reacted to that. But I thought it was cool. So clearly there's a disconnect. But I know what it's like for me to love it, me to be good at it, and people to respond to it. And I also know what it's like for me to love it and think I'm good at it, and then I see what I do when I actually output something, and it doesn't get a response that I'd like, which is like guitar playing, musical theater, live performance, and then content creation. I do content creation as a grind. Like it is a grind. It is hard, but I'm determined to get good at it because I know the benefits that exist on the other side of getting great at content creation. So in terms of
Have
my
you
what
sorry, have you always felt like you've been consistent with your content creation? Because I mean, I look
yeah,
at the YouTube and I feel like there's like some gaps between
they're
your
big,
YouTube.
yeah, yeah.
Instagram, most recently, it feels like you've been pretty consistent.
I've tried to. Yeah, yeah. In terms of like going back to I will answer that, but going back to my
Yeah.
journey, it's really been a just following what is interesting to me and what I can do in the moment, which hasn't always built the best, maybe long-term career foundations. That's something anybody watching this is learning something from me, is like the easy path isn't always the best path, and you have to discern that for yourself. But I've been very happy. I've been very grateful to do what I've been able to do. I think that the seasons of my life, when I look back on it, make perfect sense, because I learned to play guitar, made film, like got interested in film, but went to film school, but learned, like, developed my music skills while in film school, and sort of left film on the back burner. Worked in musical theater for a long time, and then an opportunity that came about as a result of me working in musical theater allowed me to reactivate my film skills to make a feature film within a musical theater environment. So, like, when you hyperlink everything together, it makes perfect sense. But in the moment, it feels like, what am I doing? I'm ping
Yeah.
ponging around to different things, and there's no focus. But I'm kind of just have to let go and relinquish the attempt to control, and just follow what is interesting to me and try to wrangle a little bit of strategy along the way. But in terms of my content creation, it has not been consistent because I personally have struggled with figuring out the Venn diagram of what I want to make versus what the audience wants, uh, and what type of content is going to be best to build a business on top of. Because like
Yeah.
there's a lots of, like, I released a video on YouTube the other day, a couple weeks ago at this point, and I loved it. It was like it's like it's about me editing my film, and it has like 62 views, and I loved the video, but it got 62 views, and I was like, oh, okay, well, no one else liked it. But there were people who commented, and they were like, this is real, man, this is awesome. And I was like, okay. But but then, like, I'll make a short about trashing on Disney Star Wars, and it'll get 20,000 views, and I'm like, what do
Yeah.
people like? Come on.
Content creation is one of those things I feel like at early on. I say early on. I mean, I know you've been doing this. I know I watched that one 9, 10 years ago at least.
Mhm.
So I know you've been doing it for a while. I also have been doing YouTube and Instagram kind of stuff for a while, and I feel like at some point you just got to say, this is who I am.
Yeah.
This is this is what I can most comfortably deliver, and
Yeah.
this is what I enjoy doing, what I'm willing to dedicate time to.
Yeah.
And then you just got to stick with it and hope that the audience comes. I mean, you look at these videos, the interview,
Mhm.
the podcast. It doesn't get a ton of views. It gets some local interaction, especially on Instagram. But to me, what's really made it easy for me is that this is who I am. Those other
Mhm.
videos that I did, where I was, reviewing a Rode wireless mic, like that wasn't me. That was me
Yeah.
trying to be somebody that I thought I should be. So I'm curious to know, like right now, I see your stuff and I hear you talking about sort of the film industry. I hear you talking about your feature film.
Mhm.
Um, it, does that feel like do you feel like you're sort of finding your voice in this?
I really do, and it's taken a
Yeah,
lot of. I heard someone say, "Have you ever heard of Naval Ravikant?"
I can't say that I have.
He's like a venture capitalist dude on Twitter. He's like kind of a venture capitalist philosopher in a
Yeah,
way. He's founded a bunch of startups. He's got a lot of bangers on X, and I lost my train of thought. I've had too much coffee today.
you're good. You're good.
What did you? What were you? What was your initial question?
I was asking, did you find your voice? Do you feel like you found your voice in your content?
Yeah, I have. It's taken me a long time because I, like you, have tried to model myself on things like people who I think I should be based
Right.
on. It's like, oh well, this person's this style of content is in, or like you said, like every filmmaker on YouTube is like, they just make camera reviews.
Right.
They make camera reviews and they do camera tests, and some of them make short films. And so I'm like, I don't want to do that. I just don't want to do that. It would be so much easier if I had less like desire to control like what I did, and I could just chase the algorithm. Like my life would be a lot easier if I would just like, I'm just going to do whatever is going to perform best on YouTube, because then you're like, then you have like no shame. But I've come across this idea that content is not art. And a lot of reasons why I have struggled in the past with content creation is because I was trying to inject too much of my need for artistic fulfillment within my art. And so like the film that I'm making, I was talking about this with someone the other day. Like, unless something you make you have zero desire to make money from, even if you just have a 1% of 1% hope that it's going to make money, it ceases to be art, in my opinion.
Yeah.
It becomes product. And so then you have to play by the rules of product. You have to market it. You have to build it with an audience in mind. It has to have a user interface. It has to have features. You got to be able to market it and sell it and scale it. Otherwise, if you're just painting a picture on a wall and just don't care, then it's art. And it's very rare people who've been able to like really channel an artistic intention and then purely and then consciously being able to scale that in business. There's probably like two people in the world ever been able to really do that. So I've had to like come to terms with the fact that the content that I make at the end of the day is some sort of product. And I'm like, okay, then you start building a funnel. Where does that product lead to? Does it lead to your art? Does it lead to a course? Does it lead to a mastermind? And then so then you I don't know. I'm just kind of spitballing in terms of where my head's at
Yeah.
right now with terms of content creation. But um I just I I but at the end of the day, I have to like making it. Content can be product, but I have to like what I'm doing. I'm not going to hate what I'm doing, because then like what am I doing? You know,
Right. Right. Well, I
if I
think
don't.
also, I mean, the time that it takes, because content creation can be I mean, it can suck the time out of your life in some
Absolutely.
cases. But if it's stuff that you feel is worth giving into, just like these interviews, to me,
Yeah.
it's worth giving that time up away from family or away from something else that you could be doing, maybe
Hmm.
even away from your art.
Sure.
So tell me this though, like in film school, or even just in your journey in general, was there was there like a real big moment of success that you've experienced? Was there a moment that was there something that bumped you forward to say, yes, this is what I want and keep going?
Um, Film school I didn't really excel in because I sort of had a lot of competing interests and a lot of distractions that probably were keeping me from getting the most out of the education. Like there are people who I went to film school with who are like so much more successful than me because I think that they knew more of what they wanted to do early on and they kind of had a clearer path laid out from the beginning. And I really didn't. Um, so a lot of the majority of what I learned, I think, has come after film school in the sense of concrete understanding. I learned a lot of stuff in film school,
Yeah.
but my film school didn't. It mainly taught kind of a lot of theory, and you had to sort of really search out any lessons in practical business minded activities. You know, like they'll teach you all about how to analyze Godard, but if it's like if you want to be an executive, not an executive, but just want to make a career in Hollywood, making your own films and having your films be profitable businesses, then they're like, oh, they had no clue.
Right.
They had no clue
Yeah.
how to do that. Um,
Did you get
and
your hands on cameras and actually
yeah, I
shoot
did.
films?
I did. I shot films, and I was proud of them. I was proud of some of the ones I did. I took some really big swings. I took some really big swings in film school, and had some extraordinary failures. I made a film about. I can't even believe I'm saying this on a podcast. My third feature film of my third, not my third feature, my third short film of the four films that I made in film school was about Hitler and his last days in the bunker and getting all these like occult revelations from angels and aliens about the future of the world and like how he like wrestled with knowing that like he knowing that not only was his empire going to collapse but like the world was about to change, and that's the film I made, and like it sucked big time, but I was like it's what I was interested in. It
I
was
just
what I was
imagine
interested
like
in.
I imagine he breaks out into music and that you got Springtime for Hitler right there,
Yeah,
right?
no,
With
it
the
was a lot dark.
producers.
It was a lot darker than that. But I think, I mean,
Um,
that was probably on my mind because I'm a huge fan of the producers. I think it's amazing.
right.
And there's also a movie that came out around that time called Downfall, which is like it's an incredible film and like a really wildly accurate portrayal of him. And I was like, and I'm into like, you know, I like alien stuff and conspiracy theories. And I was like, let's like try to mix something together. And,
Yeah.
you know, I'm in film school, like, let's just try stuff, you know, because I saw other people making films about like that looked like their life, like two people talking in a park. And I was like, I don't want to do that. I like George Lucas, Steven Spielberg, you know, James Cameron. Like those are the big films that I make. So like, let's take some big swings. And I failed, but it was fun. It was fun.
Well, you mentioned those guys, the ones that you sort of look up to. I do want to talk about some of your work, but let's start off with this idea of transmedia IP, or what's the IP stands for?
Intellectual property.
Yeah, intellectual property.
Yeah.
So, what is this transmedia idea? Because, I mean, from what I understand, these people that you've already mentioned, they are the creators of this type of stuff, especially
Yeah.
thinking of Star Wars,
Yeah.
how it definitely is much broader than just a single film or even a trilogy.
Yeah. I mean, I think that the reason I'm interested in transmedia is because I think personally, I think it's now the bar that all filmmakers have to start at if they're going to be relevant in like the entertainment landscape going forward over the next 20 to 30 years. Like AI is here to stay. Augmented reality is here to stay. Social games are here, and solo films, are like are getting more and more rare. And even though, people say, well, Nora won, like, okay, that's the Academy. Nobody saw the movie. Like, people watched
Right.
the movie, but no one saw it. But people saw the Minecraft movie. Everyone saw the Minecraft movie.
Right.
Because it checked the boxes that modern audiences are actually looking for. And I'm not saying that like everyone should go like sell out and make some sort of like IP for children. I'm not saying that, but I guess my point is that I personally am interested in chasing the thread or pulling the threads of the trends that have been emerging for the past 15 years, like in terms of like the public consciousness.
Yeah.
And if I'm gonna make a conscious career change at 40 years old, I'm going to be looking forward and figuring out how I can do new things as opposed to like holding on white knuckled to the old world that is fading away. As sad as I am about it, it is fading away. Like The Brutalist is an incredible film, but less films like The Brutalist get made every year because that's not the type of stuff that people are paying attention to anymore. If that film came out in the 70s, it would have been the biggest hit of the year. Or not in the
Yeah.
70s. That was 50 years ago at this point.
Well, it's interesting. I hear the same concept echoed from other people. Chris Kimlin was on here at one point, and Chris right now is working on the second season of this House of David.
Yeah.
He talked about how like the old films, it was all this big budget, big gear, big team, like big names. That's what you could do. He said, today you've got to figure out how can we do this on a much smaller budget. He says in some cases you got to go to Europe to be able to do a smaller budget. He's shooting this series on an FX3. So it's not about the camera anymore, because even the smallest camera out there that's, able to be a Netflix camera is incredible. So like, what I'm hearing you say is this idea of almost like we got to figure out new ways of doing things if we're going to like really gain the audience. Sometimes it's let's have that broad reach where it hits media, all types of media, whether it's virtual reality or augmented reality, or whether it's a big screen or small screen, or whether it's a game, or whether it's some live action role play kind of situation, or a I guess I would say like Disney World or Universal. But also, have you seen the the series on I think it's on Netflix, the I'm gonna forget it's about the little boy that gets arrested. Adolescence, yes. So when I think of, oh man, you've got to watch it. And the reason is it checks some of the boxes, not necessarily the transmedia stuff, but just doing things differently. Each scene or each episode is a single take.
Yeah.
It's incredible, man.
Yeah.
On top of that, it's like the storyline is incredible. So I agree with what you're saying. Like, in order for films to succeed now, they've got to sort of break the mold of what they've always done and do something different.
Yeah.
But transmedia is really interesting that you would say, out of the different options I have of doing something a little bit different, I'm going to go into like let's hit as many different platforms as we can with this type of storytelling.
Yeah, I mean, I guess I want to make a caveat to this. I think that, how do I say it? I think there are more opportunities than ever to tell good stories, but I also am a proponent of maxing out what the story does best and not trying to make everything. I personally don't believe that films are content. I think films they occupy a different space in our mind than TikTok videos. And I think one of the reasons why pictures like The Brutalist aren't getting made is because the executives and the people that are trying to control like how we perceive the entertainment industry have started to be like, oh, well, everything is everything now. And then the audiences are like, well, if everything's everything, then why should I go to a theater? Why I'll just stay at home and stream stuff. and they say, oh, everything is everything. So now this film is going to be available to buy on digital 14 days after it gets released in a theater. Like, why would you go to a theater if you can just watch it on
Right.
streaming 2 weeks later? Like, there's no incentive. And so, as much as I think it's important to maximize the different channels of storytelling, the different distribution channels of storytelling, I think we also need to max out the intention of what each form of media is meant to do. So, like, people have been talking about how films are going to be getting bigger and bigger and bigger, and sort of be like more like theme park rides. Like Christopher Nolan's The Odyssey is a great example.
Yeah.
Like, that's the type of story that is going to get butts and seats in 2026. Is it's going to take The Odyssey to get people in seats. That's
Right.
the
Right.
level, that's the scale that we have to be working at. Which is why I personally, when I look at the filmmakers that have inspired me over the years, it's the big guys. It's Christopher Nolan, James Cameron, Steven Spielberg, George Lucas, because they tell the stories that I think are like, they've got the most potential for scale in the modern era. Like, big stories, big ideas, spectacle. you know and I think the modern audience has started to be like, oh, well, that's a theater film, or oh, it's a streaming film. Like Coda won Best Picture, or Nomadland won Best Picture. You're not going to see that in a movie theater, because, like, why would you
Right.
see that in a movie theater? It probably is better in a movie theater, like, because all movies, I think, are better in a movie theater. But an audience goes, that's a streaming film, that's a theater film, you know. And I want to make theater films.
Do you feel like, especially aspiring, I mean, thinking of those guys and even transmedia, like to me, that's such a far reach, and maybe that's in line with what you talked about early on. You took big swings even when you were in film school, but like
Mhm.
to me, doing something a little bit more in line with adolescence sounds a whole lot more doable
Yeah,
than these like big transmedia, like the next Harry Potter. Like that to
yeah.
me.
but but
I think
make
of Harry
Yeah.
Potter being one of the more recent ones that has really transmedia.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. But the thing is, stuff like adolescence, it doesn't really, like, I have no interest in making stuff like adolescence personally.
Yeah,
Um, so I mean, the innovative thing is the one take, like the oneers. That's really cool.
right,
Um, but I haven't seen it, so I don't really know. I can't speak on the story. I can
right,
speak to people's opinions of the story, which has been like instantly politicized, but I don't really care about that.
right.
I like stories that, how do I say it? I don't need stories to show me the world that we're living in. I can look on social media. For me, like, the delineation of that is like, if I want to know what's happening in the real world, I will go to content that reflects the real world in a certain way. That's why I think long form podcasts are so interesting. That's why, like, documentaries have had such a big resurgence, is because we are now able to capture real life stories with the fidelity of cinema in a way that we haven't really been able to do before. And so that's why
Right.
Netflix documentaries are so good, is because we use cinematic storytelling techniques to elevate real world stories. And to me, adolescence is trying to conflate real world issues with, like, cinematic fantasy. And I think that's where things get crossed. And that's why I don't have any interest in telling those kinds of stories. I want to make stories that you cannot find in the real world. That's why I like Star Wars, Terminator, Dark Knight, Avatar, because you
Yeah.
can't, they don't exist. They're dream factories. That's
So
what I like.
it's interesting because if I look at your feature film that
Yeah.
you are currently, from what I understand, still working on editing,
Yeah.
this is sort of like your world you were in at the time. Tell me
Mhm.
a little bit about that. And it does, and correct me if I'm wrong, but it does seem like a shift from what we're right now talking about, like otherworldly, because it was literally shot and from what I
Yeah.
understand, even told from the vantage point of the world you were actively working in at the
Yeah.
time.
Yes, but it's still a world that the average person can experience.
I get that.
The
Yeah,
average
sort of behind the
person,
scenes.
yes, the average person can't go meandering around the behind the scenes of a cruise ship. So in some way, it's not at the scale that I would like to be
Right.
to tell
Right.
things out, because the feature film came about because we had the cruise ship that I was on had a 2 week dry dock in France, and there were no passengers and a bunch of construction crew that came on board to repair the ship. This happens with every cruise ship, and so we were given the option, like, do you stay on board or do you leave for 2 to 3 weeks while the ship is on dry dock? And we went on a brief hiatus for a little bit, but me and my creative partner Trevor Kraft, we were like, let's like do something with this. And like, he had the idea to shoot a short, and I was like, how about we shoot a feature? And he was like, let's do it. And I was like, crap, now we have to actually do it, because I said we had to do it.
Again,
So
another big swing you're
yes,
taking. That
exactly.
seems to be a trend with you. So
Yeah, exactly.
that's at least you're
Exactly.
consistent with that.
Yeah,
Definitely.
man. And so we just sort of like banged out a story. We thought, okay, well, we're on a cruise ship. We know the world of the theater side of things. We're musicians, so what's a story that could take place where a cruise ship musician is in dry dock? What are the story elements that you could sort of parse from that? And what's the conflict? What's the climax? And blah, blah. And so we figured all that out, and we just went for it. And I just went full, I just obsessed over it for like 3 months, and we got it done. And I'm still in the process of editing it, and I'm moving slower than I would like because I'm still trying to figure out how to elevate it,
Yeah.
because I don't want it to, I want the story to have this almost mythical feel to it, and I haven't quite figured out exactly how to do that, because I don't want it just to be like a reality TV show looking feel of just people behind the scenes of a cruise ship. I want there to be
Right.
this extra, almost spiritual, divine thread that gets weaved into it that elevates it beyond the material of just like cruise ship stuff. And I haven't quite figured that out yet.
Tell me this. At one point, I watched a video on your YouTube channel that really went through a lot of this project, really
Mm-hmm.
showed a lot of the process that you went through to even capture it. I
Mm-hmm.
don't see that video anymore. Has that video been taken down intentionally
No,
or
no, I used to have um I moved my main channel to, how do I say it? I've had two YouTube channels. The
okay.
one that the video that you saw was on a channel that I started that I branded as Kurt Jenkins. Then what
Okay.
I did is I rebranded my old channel to look exactly like my new channel, and now the channel that you're referencing is now called Game and Story Media, because my YouTube channel that I've had for years is monetized, and it's got more followers and it's got more like engagement. And so I'm like, why am I trying to start a new channel from scratch when I have this
Right.
other channel that's already monetized? And I can just pivot the channel over time. So if you go to Kurt Jenkins, you won't find that video on the video list, because it's not the same channel, even though it looked like the other channel. Does that make sense?
That's I because I knew I had seen this
Yeah.
video,
Yeah.
the one that you take it all the way through, like the whole process that you went through,
Yeah.
which was really cool. But that's on your Game and Story Media.
Yeah. Yeah. And so
I
I'm
got you.
kind of between a rock and a hard place, because that video it's got more views than I'm used to getting on sort of a long form, but I don't want to delete it and upload it to my new channel, because I just, it's already kind of lived its life. And so I'm like, I'll be talking more about it in the future. So I'll just make more videos about it in the future.
Okay, all right. And is that's the one titled "I Might Be Sued for Making This Movie"? Is that what it's
Yeah.
titled?
Yeah.
Okay.
It's sort of a clickbaity title, because like, we didn't get sanctioned by the company to do it. We just sort of did it behind the scenes. And um, I'm going to have to, my plan is definitely to make sure that everything gets cleared with like a rights and clearance lawyer, to figure out that, to see like how far I can actually go with promoting it without drawing too much attention to it
I get
from
that.
like from the wrong people. And I'm not saying names purposely, because I'm not in a point to like talk about that kind of thing yet. But my
Right.
point is, but my what I will say is that we want to do everything by the books. We mean no disrespect, and do not want to disparage the company that we were using in any way.
Well, I thought the whole process was really cool. I thought, just the sort of the level at which you were trying to accomplish this, first and foremost, is just like props to you for just having the audacity to attempt something like this.
Mm.
And then on top of it, a lot of us talk big talks and we say, hey, I want to do this and maybe even do the work up front. But here you are like carrying it forward through the editing process, through the sound design process. I mean, like not everyone follows through as well as you seem to be following through with something that ultimately is that like pet project. So many of us out of necessity throw those things aside and focus on something that's more immediate or a little more funding providing. So
Yeah.
props to you on that. Seriously.
Well, no, I appreciate that, and I believe me, I've definitely been the person who talks a big game and doesn't deliver, and I think a part of this getting shot, and I can't really say it's finished because it's not finished. It's just
Right.
it's been shot, but it will get finished. But part of the reason that we did it is because I was like, I'm sick of being that guy who talks like he's going to do stuff and never does it, and um, we only had a limited amount of time, so it was literally now or never,
Yeah.
now or never,
Yeah.
and I was able to do it. It really just it all happened because I was still working a full time job as a performer on a cruise ship, so like I had the financial stability. I get paid enough money to pay my bills, and we had a lot of free time. So I had the time to do it. And it was just a perfect combination of opportunity. Preparation meets opportunity equals luck. That's that sort of thing. And it really just was that perfect um, combination of factors that I hadn't experienced like that before. And I knew that it was, if I didn't do it then, it would have never gotten done. And I wouldn't
You,
be on this
you
podcast.
There you go. I think you could probably still gotten on the podcast. But tell me this: you had you have a screenplay. I understand that you were working on at one point. From what I
Mm-hmm.
understand, you sort of like took some time off from working on that, in part because I think at the time you said you really didn't have like a community that you really could tap into to sort of make that carry that forward.
Mm-hmm.
Where's that process at now with your screenplay? Is that still something you're working on? And then also like now, obviously, you and I both are fans of the Birmingham creative community. I mean, you came to the meetup.
Mm-hmm.
You've participated in some of the social stuff that I'm doing. Do you see like the opportunity now to sort of tap into a community that could bring that thing to fruition?
Yeah, I mean, I do. The screenplay that I was working on, I haven't touched it since I started shooting the film because I've just been so wrapped up in other things. But it comes back into my head every now and then. I'm like, oh, I'll make a note of that. I'll make a note of that. And I definitely want to write it. I'm gung ho about writing it. And I think in with regards to the Birmingham film community, there's so much talent here, and I absolutely would like to work with more people. But I think with my next film, I'm going to have to raise some capital because I don't, you know, I want to be able to pay people, and I'm not going to ask people to like work for free. Even though I made this my last film, my first film, essentially for free because we all had jobs, and so it's like you can help me for a couple hours a week. It's not going to be a
Right.
big deal because we're all getting paid, as opposed to me asking people in the Birmingham film industry like, hey, take 2 months to work for free. Like no one's going to do that. Like maybe one or two
Yeah.
people might, but like
Right.
not enough people to actually get stuff done. So, and that's just a hurdle that I have to figure out. I can't. That's way too far in the
Well,
future. I got to finish this first film first.
I love the idea of, and maybe this is something that somebody could facilitate. Maybe Creating Creators podcast could facilitate. But I would love to see specifically a film meetup. You know what I mean? Like, and I'm talking like sit around a coffee shop, grab lunch together. People, because I think of people like you. I think of Marcus January. I think of Brody Burgess. I think of I'm going to leave people out, but Max Tatum. Like these are people that write, direct, produce some incredible short films, and most of which say all the time they want to do feature films. Like I would love to see those people get together and just, if nothing else, talk like, hey, Max Tatum, he got a short film, produced and completed and has put it out there. Like talk through like what was that process like, and we do a little bit of that on here, but man, I'd love to see y'all get together, people that are really wanting to go full on like film, and say like get together, talk through your process, your experience, and then maybe even look at ways to collaborate together to get even more ideas out there or more projects completed. Because I do
Sure.
think film is huge right now in Birmingham. More and more people are wanting to do it, and more people are willing to put resources towards it.
Well, that'd be great. That'd be great.
let's let's
I
make it
mean,
happen.
I need to meet the people who've got the resources.
Definitely,
Yeah.
definitely. Well, I think those are they're there, and hopefully we'll have another meetup soon, and we can do that. But I'd love to have a specifically like a film meetup. I think that would be cool.
Yeah.
All right, I want to ask you about gear because I
Huh.
think like seeing
This will be
seeing
short.
you shoot. Do what?
This will be short.
Well, I want to talk about it because I do think you are one that's like, at least in this feature, you're like, whatever I had available, which being on a ship, it was probably pretty slim pickings to some degree, but like you don't seem to let the lack of like gear or even limitations on your gear like I
Yeah.
guess restrict you at all. You seem to be able to say, you know what, it's more about the story, it's
Yeah.
more about the process, it's not about the hardware.
Yeah. I wish I cared more about the gear. And I think the reason I don't care about the gear is probably sort of a scarcity trauma response from never having a lot of access to the gear. And ironically, I have a Blackmagic Pocket Cinema Camera 6K Pro that I've like rarely used because I'm
That's a
like,
great camera,
yeah,
except for
because
the storage, being able to store all those files.
yeah, I mean, I've got a couple of like really big hard drive cards that go
Yeah.
in there, but every time I'm honestly every time I turn it on, I'm like, ugh, it's just so much. Like I just want to use my iPhone. Like I really do. Like the iPhone is my favorite camera. I love it. Um, and again, I think it's a coping mechanism because I've never had access to the not only the cameras but like the tools and gadgets. Like I've got the camera, but then it would take another 3K for me to kit it out to be
Right.
able to do what I need to do. And maybe I just, I need to get over that and just start getting commercial clients and blah blah blah. But I think I come more from a content world than I come from a filmmaking world. And so all these big fancy cameras, they just seem like laborious and too like cumbersome. But I need to get over that because when you make films, you need cinema cameras and blah blah blah. But like I think I'd rather work with like on my next film, I want to work with like a real DP, like a
Right.
true DP who I can offload a lot of that responsibility to because I've got the sensibilities for composition and like I love that stuff, but I'm just not a gearhead. I
Yeah.
shot my feature on a Sony camcorder. It was like a 4K. I don't even remember the model number. Like it was a 4K camcorder. It's got a great picture, um, but it's a camcorder because I thought I was going to shoot YouTube videos, and then I ended up shooting a feature. And then we used my phone, used my wife's DJI Osmo Pocket 3, and we just made it work. And I don't think audiences are going to care.
Is there a technical aspect to shooting or capturing that you do think you have to prioritize? Is there a hardware or piece of hardware that you feel like is more important maybe than the camera?
Sound. That's one thing I learned on this one is like there were some shots where the sound wasn't great, and I've heard people say this, but I never really learned the lesson until I experienced it myself. It's like you can have a crappy picture, but if you got great sound, the audience will at least
Yeah,
click. They will click
I
at it,
agree.
you know.
Yeah.
And I also think too. I think that I think a lot of the ways, and this is like getting a little spicy hot take, I think a lot of the ways people that are used to doing commercial work hold their cameras is not in alignment with how movies look. I think there is a way to hold a camera that makes it look like a movie versus making it look like a commercial. And I can always tell when something is a commercial versus when something is a movie. And it's the difference of like a degree or two. It's the I don't know how to explain it, but like
Okay.
when I would make content on my iPhone and I had the intention of making a piece of content, it looked like a piece of content. But when I would shoot my camcorder and I lined up a shot for a movie, when I watched it, I was like, it's a movie. It's weird, but it's like, it's the way like you're sitting in your body. I think I'm getting a little too esoteric here. But my point is that it really isn't the gear. I think it's about how you hold the gear, how you use the intention that you use the gear to channel through into the way you capture the picture.
Do is your role on set? Do you see your role on set as being like a director? Because you were just saying you want like a DP for like camera stuff. Do you see more of like you want to be the writer and director? Is that sort of what you see yourself, sort of the role you see serving on set?
I think so. I
Yeah.
think so. I think producer too. I like the logistics and the business aspect of it. Directing, writing, and producing is definitely where I find my strengths.
Yeah. I you know it's amazing the like we sort of talked about already, the resources now in Birmingham,
Hmm.
both people and gear.
Yeah,
I do think like just running through people in my head, tons of people that I think would be great for you to meet and get to know, as well as people that are somewhat already doing some of the stuff that you're wanting to do. I
yeah,
just think then it's just a matter of pairing up with your story. So I think it's
sure.
great. I think what you've already done is really neat. Your content that you've been creating, to me, I think I was a little bit surprised because whenever we met at the meetup, you know, your personality didn't like scream somebody that would be doing the YouTube content, if that makes sense.
Hmm.
Not that there was anything about your personality that said you couldn't, but it just seemed you were a little bit more reserved and a little more quiet. And then I see this. Not that I think now your content seems to be very reflective, which
Hmm.
probably feeds into it. But I just didn't think you'd be putting yourself out there quite like you are.
Yeah,
But props to you on that, man. Seriously.
yeah, I think I've probably gotten more comfortable. I think maybe at the time of the meetup, I just got back from the ship and I didn't really want to do content, so I may have not been. Or I don't really remember the headspace that I was in at the meetup. I think I just wanted to meet people.
Yeah.
But but the way kind of the way I look at content now is like I want to put myself out there, but I want to put myself out there in the right way. And this kind of goes back to what we were talking to. Like I see the kind of content that I'm going to be making over the next month on YouTube is it's going to be an experiment because I want to see if I can find a way to make the content that I want to make actually resonate as opposed to, trying it once and then giving up. Um, yeah, but I'm not going to get into that.
All right. Let's talk about this.
Oh God. Yeah, dude. Super
Because
hunting.
this is content right here.
Yeah.
This seems like this definitely demonstrates you grew up in Alabama.
Yes.
I
Yes.
also grew up in Alabama, so I can say that, born and
Yeah.
raised. But
That's my the other guy is my friend Gray Lloyd. I've known him since I was in middle school, and he works for the University of Alabama, and he's like really successful like video producer over there, working for.
is he going to make us take this down?
No, no, he loves it. We love this.
Tell me about this. Tell me what in the world is this? What y'all were doing? I want to pull this up
Yeah, we were really
while we're
like
looking at it.
I think I
If I
don't
can
know
find
how
it.
it came about exactly, but I know that we we're riffing off the stereotypes of like the hunting community.
Right.
My buddy Gray was jokingly into uh, like Terry Labonte and NASCAR. Like we just thought that Terry Labonte is such a funny name. Like it's a funny sounding name. And when you say it with a Southern accent, like Terry Labonte, it just sounds funny. And I think so. We just got together one day and just literally just improvised and just riffed on stuff. And then the footage sort of stayed in my camera for years. And then I cut it like together in like 2014 into like a little mini documentary, and I just love it. It's such a fun thing that it's, how do I say it, the most fun I've ever had making anything, whether it be films, music, whatever, is stuff where I felt like I was goofing off and I felt like I was just trying to make the other person have a good time.
Yeah.
And anytime I've tried to take myself seriously and make something serious, it's always failed and I've always thought it sucked. But like this, I think is great. I love it so much. My buddy, he took this film to a meetup that he had probably 10 years ago at this point, and it was like a bad film meetup. It was like, bring your first films that suck and we'll play them and we'll laugh at them. And he played that for people, and they were like, bro, you were supposed to bring your bad films. This is actually really good. And
That's great. I mean,
yeah,
first of all, just the fact that that kind of meetup is happening, that sounds great. I might have
yeah,
to steal that at some point.
yeah.
And your dental work,
Hmm.
obviously, man, you really should give your dental surgeon props because he
Yeah,
did
man.
some work on you there.
Yeah.
But no, I love it. I think it's hilarious. I always love to see people. I love to see where people came from. You know what I mean? And
Hmm.
I don't mean that in the sense of like your origin. I mean like where did you start? What was the
Yeah.
first project you ever did?
Hmm.
That's something that I encourage people. Leave your videos out there. Don't hide them.
Yeah.
Don't store them away somewhere. Don't
Yeah.
make them private. Leave them out there so that we can all see where somebody started.
Yeah, because like this was the last thing that I thought that you would ever ask me about. And I'm glad that you did. And this
Yeah,
actually is kind of it's a moment of like, it's just another reminder of the stuff that I love doing the most is stuff like this. Like me and my buddies were into South Park and Monty Python and Christopher Guest documentaries.
yeah,
And when I see that and I see the origin of kind of where my creative sensibilities came from, I realize that I need to do a better job at dumping and rejecting all of the seriousness that I think I have to adhere to as an adult. And if I'm going to be a filmmaker and a creative, then never lose sight of the stuff that I was interested when I was first discovering my creativity. So thank
yeah.
you for bringing that up.
Yeah, well, I think it's great, and I agree. I think we all need to probably take ourselves a little less seriously in general.
Absolutely.
In general, learn to laugh
Absolutely.
at yourself. Definitely, I think that's a
Absolutely.
superpower. So,
Yeah.
let me say this: like, I know we sort of already talked a little bit. Let me see what is next on here. I do want to know what's next for you, but let's first talk about anyone. Are you
That
bothered
hold on.
by
I
some
don't
of those?
even the picture with me with my head. I don't even remember that picture being taken.
The one with your buzz cut?
I don't even know where you got that picture.
I think it's on. Oh, it was somebody tagged you in it. I think it was in your tagged.
On
So,
Facebook?
Instagram.
I'll have to look at that because I don't remember
Yeah,
that.
yeah. I think
That's
so. I
funny.
think that's where it is. I think there's like 3 photos of the same haircut. It's like one of them you're looking straight on, and the other ones you're looking off to the side. But
Probably 2018, maybe. I don't know. I'll figure it out.
yeah, and then
Okay.
you got the long hair on there too with the
Yeah,
guitar.
that was back when I was trying to be John Mayer.
It's got a great look, man. I love the.
Oh,
I think
it's
you're wearing a
yeah.
coat. Yeah,
Yeah, yeah.
yeah.
It's a fun look.
But one thing I wanted to mention, just a note to you, a note of respect to you, man. The musical ability and skills that you have, and I see that even in your vlogs,
Mm.
when with the way you use music, the way you use different sound design techniques, you seem to have really good rhythm in your edits. And I think a lot of that, what I've witnessed is people like you who have musical ability, editing is just so much richer usually,
Mm,
specifically with sound design.
mm.
And I mean that not always music, but sometimes it's the dialogue and the pacing and then those like little, I mean, you might use a riser or something like that in a certain spot. But I notice that in people because I lack that in myself. I have no musical ability whatsoever, and I feel like my editing suffers because of it. But props to you on that. Do you do editing at all? Like, do you ever have you worked like for somebody in editing?
Never.
Okay, all
And
right.
it's probably something I should probably do.
Oh, I mean,
It's probably something I should look for,
I
but I just
definitely think
yeah,
you would be skilled in that. I mean, I think your
yeah,
music probably just even if it was just laying out dialogue on top of a soundtrack, I think the timing and the spacing and the breathing room that you could probably
yeah.
provide just because of your musical background.
I mean, the thing I'm reminded you talking about this. I'm reminded there's I don't know whether he probably said it, but in the James Brown movie, there's a moment where he talks about how everything is a drum, and he was like, "What's that?" And he's like telling the guitar player, "It's like play something, play what you're playing." And he plays something. He's like, "What is that?" He's like, "That's a drum." And he plays a bass line. He's like, "What's that?" It's like, "That's a drum." Like everything's a drum, and so everything is music. Um, and so when there's also a video of Martin Scorsese directing, I think Robert De Niro on The Irishman, and it's a view of behind him sitting at Video Village, and Robert De Niro is doing, saying his lines, and Marty's doing this. He's like sort of going with the dialogue, and like I really identify with that. But with content, it's just different. It's like content. It's like you have to drink coffee before. It's like you ever
Yeah.
seen the spider webs of the different spiders that were on different drugs and they produce different
Yes.
spider webs.
Dude, that's one of my favorite
Yeah,
YouTube videos
yeah,
ever or
and that
social videos ever. Yeah.
yeah, and so like
Bust
that's
a
how I.
cap in you.
No, no, no. I'm talking. No, no, no. I'm talking about.
Oh.
I'm talking about. It's an actual study they did, and they gave a
Oh no.
spider.
I
They.
thought you were talking about the spoof one on YouTube where it's like
Oh,
where
that
they
one.
end up getting the one that's like
They give them crack
uh
or something, and they
yeah,
do that.
yeah, the
Yeah, yeah,
crack
yeah.
spider.
Yeah, 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 yeah. I think that's a riff on the actual study, like the actual
Okay. No,
industrial thing they did.
I
But
never
that's
knew there was a real one. I just
yeah.
knew that the marijuana spider made a hammock.
Oh, that's funny. That's funny. But no, I see its editing is that way. So like when you make content, and again, I'm not like the best content editor. I see guys like even like local guys like Junard, like he's got a great sensibility for editing content. And you look at like big YouTube guys like Sam Colder or Casey Neistat, it's like the spider that's on caffeine, where the
Right.
web is just like you know. But my editing, I think where I my strength in editing lies probably more in the slower paced type of stuff, like the sort of the I don't know, just different. Like I look at like Van Neistat, like creators like Van Neistat, like I'm much more in line with that type of slower editing. So again, I mean, I don't know, I could probably learn, but I don't know.
Yeah. Well, just what I've seen, and again, this is content you've created, so I'd be really interested to see what you would do with, like more of a commercial type project. But
Yeah.
but tell me what's next for you. I mean, I know like obviously you've got a big project you're still working on with this feature, but
Hmm.
what's next for you now? Like, what are you looking for? What are you hoping to do? I know we've already talked about the idea of collaborating and working with other creatives. Like, what's next for you in general?
Well, really wanting to get the dial in my content creation and get it more focused in alignment with sort of my business goals. That's sort of like the full surface level transparent mission that I'm kind of on right now. Finish the film, finish like a cut of like a major. I have like an assembly cut of the film, and then I've got to kind of do another edit. I got to get Trevor into Birmingham so we can record the score and hopefully have the film out by fall-ish, late fall. I don't know, in time for award season. I'm joking.
Of course,
Yeah, and so
definitely.
and so, yeah, but it really is just figuring out how to align my creative mission with the business. That's really like, that's very vague and cryptic, but that's what's on my mind. It's like, how do
Yeah.
I productize myself?
What type of sets? Because I mean, we've talked about before about the idea of collaborating with other creatives. What kind of
Mm-hmm.
sets would you want to be on in Birmingham?
Any set.
Okay.
I don't
All
care.
right.
I don't care. You
So
know, I've heard,
commercial, short film,
I've heard,
all this stuff.
I've Alex Hormozy, the entrepreneur, content creator. He said, if you have no money, you should have no shame. And so I have no shame.
Well, I think the sets that are in Birmingham probably would. I mean, I can imagine there's tons of opportunities for you to get connected with some of
Well,
those people.
well, let me ask you.
Um,
Let me ask you this: What
yeah,
is You can leave this in or not. If you feel,
yeah.
I leave this up to your discretion. What's not being done in Birmingham? Like, what are the gaps? Because like, there's like a million cinematographers. There's a million editors. Where's the blue ocean in the Birmingham production world?
I don't know that you would necessarily find a gap necessarily because I do believe we have a lot of people that are
Yeah.
capable of doing a lot of different types of work
I
on
guess
set.
I guess is there a role that's underserved, I should say.
I I would say this. I would say you're what's missing on set.
What
You know
does
what I
that mean?
mean?
What does that mean?
I mean like your background, your personality, your skills, your understanding, your eye for something, like you are what's missing on set right now. That doesn't mean that there's like a role that is sitting with an empty chair and they're just waiting and wishing that somebody would come and sit there. There's somebody sitting in that role. I mean, or there's somebody sitting in three different roles and they're taking up that one as well. Because all of these sets that films are being shot or commercial work's being done, the work's getting done. So I
Yeah.
don't think anything's like lacking. I think what it is like your perspective, your experience could positively impact that project, and that's what's missing. You
Hmm.
know, and most of these guys that I talk to, I mean, it's not a matter of like, oh man, we're looking for this one person to do this. They will grab anyone. I mean, if they're like, hey, I need somebody to be grip on this set, or somebody being gaffer on this set, or somebody being cam op or focus puller, they will find somebody and get them in there. That person may be an actor that's what they really want to do, but they're willing to pull focus for you, or that person may be normally a camera operator or DP, but they'll be grip or gaff on your set. It's like in the Birmingham community, and I don't know these other communities. Like I know there's some places where there's unions, and so people can't fill
Yes.
in whatever roles needed, but Alabama's not like that.
It's
And
so.
so yeah,
I'm
so
glad that. Yeah.
In Alabama, you can serve any role you want on set.
It's how it
And
should
there's
be. That's how it
well,
should be.
there's a lot of good to that because I
Yeah.
think like you're saying, you want to direct, that's your goal ultimately, but in the meantime, getting on a set with, another director and you getting to even PA or grip for them, like, or even just say, hey, can I be on set with you? Would love to see your process. Most of the time, people aren't going to turn down an extra set of hands or just an opportunity to connect with somebody. At least that's been my experience. Now, I'm also not asking people usually, hey, can I get on set as a grip? They may look at me and be like, what experience do you have as grip? I don't. I'm a one man show most of the time. I've
You got
only
the frame.
branched
You
out
got the frame to
recently.
be a grip.
Thank you. I
Yeah.
appreciate
You got that
that.
like football player. You
Yeah,
know.
it's genetics that hides the fat well, I guess, and it's a table, strategically placed table and folded arms. So, but anyway, that's what I would say is like the best thing for anyone to do in this community that wants to get more involved with commercial or film projects. just get on
Mm-hmm.
set,
Yeah.
just get there and do it. And most of the time that's from, I mean, I encourage people, DM people, you know, come to the meetups, hopefully, is something
Yeah.
that I would encourage people to do.
Yeah.
Watch the podcast, but more than that, like reach out, grab coffee with somebody. Most of these people are ready and willing to meet up and talk.
Yeah.
So, and I
Absolutely.
think some of your experience and skills and just vision for things, I think plenty of these people could benefit from. So,
Well, I hope you're right.
I'm confident. I'm confident. So, all right, tell me this: who inspires you? Like, who do you look at right now for, I guess your creative inspiration, maybe your life kind of like encouragement.
Mhm.
Who do you look at and sort of find that spark from?
Um, well, it's really not a lot of, how do I say it? I get currently, like right now, April 16th, 2025. I'm getting a lot of inspiration from my church, and I don't know how deep you want to go into that, which we
We
can go
can.
as surface or deep as you like.
Yeah, yeah.
Um, I recently joined St. Simeon Orthodox Church, and it's been an incredible experience. The amount of knowledge and the amount of kindness that is exhibited in that church between the church fathers and the members of the church has been beyond humbling. And
Do
so,
you have a background in Orthodox theology,
no,
or was
no,
this
I
new to you?
this is new. A
Okay.
buddy of mine turned me on to the church a couple years ago, and I walked in and I was like, "Oh, this is where I'm supposed to be." And it kind of the the full journey of it was inhibited by me leaving and going on a cruise ship, so I wasn't able to go really all in.
Right.
But recently, I was baptized into the church, and it's just been like this, like legitimate, people. I didn't really know what people meant when they were talking about born again, but I really do feel like it's a second chance at the process of
Yeah.
being a Christian. And so that I'm getting a lot of inspiration from that. And then secondly, which is like the total opposite end of the spectrum, is a lot of like tech guys in Silicon Valley, venture capitalists, Mark Andreessen, Peter Thiel, even people like Sam Altman of OpenAI.
Yeah.
I forget his name. The CEO of Runway, the generative AI company.
Yeah. Yeah.
Those guys I think are fascinating. Not because like I necessarily agree with everything they have to say or think that they're, the best people in the world, but like they just have such an understand. They're really good at kind of reading the tea leaves of where things are headed, and I just find that fascinating, especially as someone who wants to sort of build an entertainment business of my own. Part of your job is to kind of be able to see what other people can't see, and to be able to be uh, ahead of the curve. And I'm just inspired by that because I find a lot of the people within the traditional Hollywood system, they don't really do that for me. They seem like they're reacting to stuff, or they're sort of captured by either with ideologies or focused on things that I don't find as relevant as they do. So that's what I would say. That very,
Yeah.
again, polar opposites of influence.
I was expecting you to say polar opposite was be that you were inspired by booze or drugs or something like that. That would have been more polar opposite.
Yeah, well, I mean, if you look at like, I mean, okay, I'll give an example. Like, you know, think about the teachings of Jesus,
Right.
and then I'm also inspired by like Andreessen Horowitz, which is a big VC firm. They just launched this big ad campaign on Twitter that basically is like championing their ability to invest in companies that build death machines, weapons of war, and how
Right.
we need to build more stuff we need to build more stuff in America, manufacturing, and a lot of that includes things that are military operations. So it's like you have Christ, which is like the peace, and then you have
Right.
weapons of death. And so it's its own version of polar opposite.
Yeah.
But the mechanics of how they got to that place, I think, are still interesting, of being able to read the trends of society in ways that other people can't, and be
Yeah.
ahead, you know.
I would be really interested. We need to grab coffee sometime. I would love to know more about Orthodox theology and just your experience there. I come out of a Southern Baptist,
Mhm.
Reformed Baptist kind of theology, and
Mhm.
I'm always interested in theological beliefs and also like Orthodox seems to be one of those that you don't hear many people like especially new people to it. I feel
Mhm.
like you're oftentimes born into Orthodox theology, and so that's really interesting. And
Not anymore.
yeah, I would love to. We'll have to grab some coffee and talk sometime. I'd love to hear more about
Yeah,
that.
I mean, I'm so new. I'm like a
Yeah,
baby at it, that I'm not even in a place to begin to talk about what it is or isn't by any
right.
means. But
Yeah, no,
all
I
I'll
would.
say is that if I mean, yeah, I'd happy to grab coffee.
Yeah,
But if you're
yeah,
curious, there are tons of resources online about
right.
the the foundations of it.
Yeah. No, I think just the idea of like sparking your interest and you getting into it, I'd be curious to know that.
Sure.
But yeah, man, I think that both of your inspirations, although seem contradictory, I can also see why you would be drawn into both of those. And hey, we're all complex people. Sometimes we're drawn to war, and sometimes we're drawn to peace. So
Yeah.
not that you were necessarily drawn to those,
No,
but
I mean,
yeah.
I just, yeah, I get you.
Yeah. All right. Thank you so much for talking with me today. I really do
Man.
appreciate you, man. I think what you've done or what you're currently doing on your social content, I mean, I'm just telling you from me personally, I'm interested. I think the way you're delivering the stuff, the kind of stuff you're talking about, I do think it's relevant to today and the film industry. And I like your delivery of it. I think it's neat. Your YouTube content. I'm interested in this feature film. I look forward to finally being able to see it. The behind the scenes
Me
stuff
too.
I've enjoyed, and of course, obviously, this kind of stuff we need more of it.
Yeah,
So don't take
absolutely.
yourself too seriously, but at the same time, man, create because it's fun, right?
Yeah, no, that's absolutely right. I sincerely appreciate you having me on. You know, you DM'd me about probably a month or so ago at this point.
Yeah, yeah, we've
I'm
gone back
glad
and
that
forth a couple of times
I'm
with it.
glad that it finally happened, and I look forward to the next meetup whenever it is.
Yeah, I'm struggling right now just lining up the sponsors,
Sure.
but definitely I think that's something that I'm ready to do another one, and hopefully we'll get to do one maybe early this summer or
Cool.
midsummer. So
Great.
and I expect to see you there, man.
I will absolutely be there.